Today is such a full circle moment because my very first TEDx event was in 2012 with my mentor, Faith Popcorn, the OG futurist. So to be able to stand here on this stage and talk about one of our greatest passions, brailing the edges of culture to predict the future, my goodness, incredible. But let me not get ahead of myself. Before I delve into the art and science of futurism, what is a futurist? Right? At its core, being a futurist is really about being a curator that shines light on changes to come. When you think about it, it's about being able to stay a step ahead. As Principal and Chief Strategy Officer of BrainReserve, every exploration begins with one guiding question. If you knew everything about tomorrow, what would you do differently today? Because if we're not willing to course correct, if we're not willing to make changes, why even bother looking ahead? Hope is a choice, especially now when we're waking up in a world that we don't always recognize. We have to really think about what we're actually going to do. That's why our practice focuses on applied futurism, so you can create actionable strategies in the face of constant change with purpose. When I'm at a dinner party and I tell people are futurists, you can imagine I get a lot of interesting reactions. On the one hand, some people will say, oh my gosh, I'm expecting you to pull out a 1-900 call me now phone card. Or on the other hand, people are genuinely curious and say well, how do you do it? How do you predict what's next? Well, futurism, it's a discipline. It can be taught, sharpened, honed through unrelenting curiosity, because culture and the future is always in motion. So how do we stay curious? Well, that leads us to one of my favorite things to do, as we talked about brailing the edges of culture. You have to get your hands a little dirty. We want to see, taste, touch and feel and smell and hear what's happening beyond our everyday reality. We need to get out, meet other people, understand different perspectives beyond our own. And I'd love to share with you 3 ways in which to braille the culture, because today is all about ideas worth spreading. Let's spread some of these ideas. One of the first pieces is about how do you have a system that helps you organize your thoughts, right? How do you make sense of all the things that you're seeing? Our global trend bank is a way of doing that. There's 17 lenses that help us codify and predict behavior. These lenses help us understand the why. What is the underlying motivation? Cocooning, for example. Cocooning is all about the craving for safety in an unpredictable world. Cocooning started as, I want to be in the home cocoon where I feel warm and cozy and safe. And then the car cocoon, I want that safety as I'm out on the road. I want the armored cocoon, all of these security systems. The fantasy cocoon, I want to be safe in all of these worlds that I can see and be a part of. Well, we all live the corona cocoon. We don't want to go back into that one. But as we're walking into now, we're seeing the regenerative cocoon. I want my home to heal me. I want to go into the cloud cocoon even, right? How can I be safe even in a home beyond the limits of my own body? All of these elements and these changes, these shifts that we see happening in culture come back to that same motivation, safety. So now as we think about what's going to be coming next and we think about a lens like cocooning, we're brailing and looking at everything from helium mining on the moon to investors' futures, right? We're looking at doomsday preppers. We're looking at weighted blankets. We're looking at microdose comfort and care, because when you understand the motivation, the why, it's so much easier to see what's next. We all can see it. It's right there in front of us. So it's about continually brailing and understanding where things are coming next. That brings us to the second way in which we braille, our global talent bank. this motley crew of brilliant individuals that constantly challenge conventional thinking, right? These are the dreamers, the builders. How do we understand what people are thinking about, beyond our own categories? These are the artists, the alchemists, the scientists, the madmen, all of them. We need to understand not just what we can see in the marketplace today, but what's on their vision board. What's that problem that keeps them up at night? We're constantly interviewing them, understanding what they're seeing, bringing them together to talk about their ideas, because when you ask people what they're dreaming about, it gives you a much better sense of what's possible in the future. It's really easy to think that we're all part of these different groups, but there's such this interconnectedness. We're all part of the same ecosystem where one small idea in an individual community can create a ripple effect across the world. That butterfly effect happens in culture. It happens with trends, and it happens to help us understand where things are going in the future. That's part of that little secret sauce. The third way in which we think about brailing the culture and understanding what's going to happen in the future is through AI. We heard about that earlier today. This is an incredible system through our tech stack where we're able to not just understand the why and think about the what's happening, but when. When? That's what everyone always asks me. You predict the future, but when is that going to happen? When we want to understand these large language models, it helps us quantify the cultural energy around how fast is this going to come into play, because that's what's often been missing in futurism. It's not just around divine wisdom and our intuition or the sense of these educated guesses, but bring in that precision of science. There are so many different models that have been coming out. The tools it's mind-boggling to keep up with them. GPT, Perplexity, NWO.AI, Claude, Board of Innovation, we're trying them all. And that's what we'll do. Try them all, fail fast, and see what new thing that we can learn again. Because when we have greater precision around when something's going to happen, it helps us understand when this seedling of an idea, this seedling of where the future began, when is that going to enter our collective consciousness, right? It takes us to a whole new place of what's possible because we're constantly brailing the culture beyond our everyday in 70 different language, billions of communication that's happening. How do you understand that at scale? So when you combine those three elements, we started with, here's this system of how do I organize all the things that I'm seeing, the why. Then you take all of these elements that you learn from the most brilliant minds in the world, the what that's coming, and then be able to couple that with the when. It takes you to an entire different place. And it's critically important to think about the future as not one stagnant point in time, right? The future happens across a number of different timing horizons. We think about it in the near, the next, and the far future. When you're looking at the near, you're looking at articles, books, blog posts, music lyrics, thinking about what's bubbling up, grabbing people's attention right now. When you go into the next, we look at IPOs, we want to understand SEC filings, patents, think about where search data. It lets us know when we're just on the inkling of when an idea is actually going to become into action. And looking at the far future, well, that's one of my favorite things to look at because these are the breadcrumbs. You want to look at VC funding. You want to be able to look at sci-fi movie scripts, the best part. You want to be able to think about all the ways in which this can go because when you're in the far future, you can backcast and then say, how do I make that into something actionable now? That's the whole point of looking ahead. When you combine those different elements and look at all of these different perspectives, it helps you paint a very clear and total picture. That is a future force. So I'd love if you'd indulge me a little bit, and I'd love to share with you a couple of future forces that I'm really getting excited about today. Future forces remind me of my boys, Maxon and Maddox, with my husband, Michael. They are intertwined. They are inseparable, but they repel one another. They're fighting like Tom and Jerry, but they propel one another forward because it's in that friction that it can actually compel culture ahead, right? And I tell you all, like I tell our boys, embrace the tensions. It's in that intersection of where two seemingly incongruous things can actually propel us forward, because at that intersection is where we see new opportunity. Two future forces I'd love to talk about today. One, on the one hand, we have beyond biology, right? This place of where we want to reach beyond the limits of what our own bodies will allow us to do, bringing in technology, embedding it with our own chemistry, and just understanding where it can go, expanding our minds, expanding our bodies, even expanding our own lifespans. And on the other hand, we have this hyperhumanity. What's going to make us most true, most human, most pure, and being able to hold on to that and having this sense of need within it. You think they're completely separate, and how can they both be true at the same time? Well, let's talk about them a little bit. With beyond biology, think back to, the time when we just had the monocle, right? We're saying, wait, you're going to put all this technology inside of me. Are we really talking about a future where we're all about to be human cyborgs? Like, really, Tiana, that's where we're going? Maybe, but right, it started with just this one little glass. Then we went to glasses. I see some of you wearing them. Contacts. Then lenses that allow you to measure your blood sugar. Lenses that allow you to scan the world and feed information directly into your mind. Lenses that actually project you into other worlds, and the technology just has to go a little bit more inside. Well, we're seeing that same kind of progression today, right? Where healthier lifestyles started with just what I ate or how my body performed, and then we started measuring each step, measuring each breath. We saw on the edges of culture people wanting to have more hospital-grade care and cryotherapy and IV drips and red light therapy for brain cognition, all of these elements. And then you get into this place where you say, well, I need exoskeletons to help me run faster, stronger, better, longer. I want BCI, brain-computer interface, so that my brain itself, I no longer have to type it or say it, I can think it, and then it knows where I'm going. This place we're constantly trying to get us into a place of how can I go beyond what my biology was designed to only do? And we think, is that it? Is that where we're going? Well, on the other side of the future force is hyperhumanity. We see this movement that's happening now that we want to hold on to the parts of us that are most human and understand that we need to preserve that in a more unpredictable and hostile world. You see it where we see companies wanting to be able to plant flowers because they know that their own ingredients may become extinct. We see islands that are carbon neutral, that are bringing ancient practices with modern technology. We're seeing the return of cuddle parties. We had our own here today. It's this sense of being able to hold on to what's human that can be completely opposite, but yet still propel both forward. Before I leave the stage today, I want to make our call to action abundantly clear. I want you all to unleash your inner futurists. You all have it inside of you. We all have the ability to be able to think and perceive of what's coming next. Because you think about how you observe and you see the world. As an Afrofuturist, myself, my lenses, I'm always going to look at things through the perspective of technology, imagination, and liberation. But you each can develop your own lenses and perspectives that you see the world. So here's your call to action. Remember this: the desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. right? So my challenge to you is pick up a book, listen to a podcast that you never thought you'd read, walk home, drive home a different way, right? Listen to a place of music that you thought like, oh my gosh, this might make my brain bleed, but it will help you flex your inner futurist muscle. It'll help train that part of your brain that says, I'm going to braille the edges of culture so I can see what's coming next. And it's important to be able to understand what's coming next, because if we're just sitting back and passively observing it, we don't want the future just to come back by us. We want to be a part of building it, rebooting it. That's what we're here to learn and talk about. So I will leave you with the same question where we began. Now that you're even more curious about tomorrow, what will you do differently today? Thank you.